Hello and welcome to everyone today. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we are in Manila, Philippines. My name's Candy Hertz and it's such a pleasure to be here with you. Of course, we are here for the FIBA Basketball World Cup 2023, but today we are looking forward to the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup 2026 happening in September in Germany. And of course, we are so honoured and happy to have the wonderful Sue Bird here with us today. 4 times FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup champion, plus 5 incredible gold Olympic medals to her name. And of course now we are so honoured and thrilled that she has accepted to become our incredible global ambassador for the Women's Basketball World Cup 2026 in Germany. Also on the stage with us today, of course, we have the incredible Pau Gasol, hugely talented and decorated, and of course, handing over the reins as he was our global ambassador in Sydney in 2026. So looking forward to hearing some reflections of his time as well. Before we officially get started with any questions, I would love, and it's my honour, to invite up our FIBA Secretary General. Please come and join me on the stage, Andreas Zaklis.
Thank you and welcome, Mabuhay, and we appreciate very much your presence. Yes, it is a great moment for basketball, for FIBA, for men's basketball as well as for women's basketball. We said last year in Sydney, in the best Women's World Cup ever, that we were very proud to have a legendary player of the men's game being our global ambassador in Pau Gasol, and we could not find a better ambassador for the 2026 World Cup in Germany than Sue Bird. Thank you both for being here with us. Sue has a record that we may not see any other player break. His consistency in your performance has been tremendous, and the moments we have experienced, we have enjoyed your incredible performance on the court in the World Cups 4 times. And of course, the very emotional moments in Tokyo will certainly be part of FIBA history. The FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup 2026 will be hosted in Berlin, Germany, the capital of Germany, a country that has hosted before the World Cup in 1998, in 2 fantastic arenas. Arena Berlin, that hosted last year's Eurobasket men's final, as well as the Max Schmeling-Halle that hosted the final in 1998. FIBA continues its commitment to strengthening the position of women in basketball through a very clear decision of its maximum body, the FIBA Congress. 158 national federations gathered in Manila 2.5 weeks ago and gave us a very strong mandate, a very strong task. Women in basketball is one of the 3 strategic priorities of FIBA. And that means more women that play the game, more women that coach the game, more women that govern the game, more women that officiate the game, more women that watch the game. And we had, of course, over the last 4 years, a lot of work done. A World Cup in Australia that broke so many records, the attendance record, the social media following record, the record in broadcasting numbers, and also brought some new countries on the stage. Our important decision is to bring back the 16-team roster, a broader roster, a broader qualification process of 24 teams, a process that will start with the Continentals in 25, where Germany will also host a group, and we will start the promotion already for Berlin 26 already next year. Why next year? Because when our 12 teams will be playing in Lille and Paris for the Olympics, a few weeks later, we start the first round of qualification to the 26 World Cup. So what was in the past a 2-week tournament, now is a 2-year process of promotion of women's basketball, a process that we believe will bring our women's game to the next level. This is our humble but ambitious objective, and I could not have imagined a better duo on the stage today. On behalf of the entire Central Board, our gratitude to both of you. Between you, a very beautiful trophy that now sits in the offices of USA Basketball, and that will have to be brought back to Germany in September 26 for the contestants. Thank you again very much, and the word is, of course, with our legends. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Andreas. So much excitement to look forward to, and next year is when it all kicks off. Sue, we'd love to open the floor with a couple of questions, starting with you. I saw a beautiful smile on your face when we announced that you are the ambassador here today. What are your initial thoughts and feelings about this fantastic role?
Just a lot of excitement. On top of that, I feel honored to be sitting here. Paul, thank you so much for holding it down in Sydney as the last ambassador. Nobody better to take that baton from. And I really feel like you're probably going to hear me say this a lot today. Women's basketball is at a really exciting moment. It's pivotal, and no better way to continue, not as a player anymore, but as a former player, than to be sitting here as an ambassador to help continue to grow that game and really ride that wave that is women's basketball right now.
It's so exciting to hear you speak like that. Of course, you've had so many wonderful opportunities to play for your country. This is just another space to be able to do that. What does it feel like? Share with us in the room what that feels like, being able to represent your country.
There's really nothing like it. I always like to answer this question. I've gotten it a couple of times with a little bit of a story, and it's a pretty quick one. In one of my first Olympics, the Athens Olympics, winning a gold medal, flying home, I really realized what it was to represent your country, because on the plane ride back to Seattle, one of the flight attendants came up to me and was like, "Hey, do you have your medal?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." You don't check that. It's always in your carry-on. And before I knew it, she was asking me if the pilot could see it. And all of a sudden, the medal is getting passed up and down the aisles. Everybody just wanted to touch it, to see it. And I think what's really, symptomatic about that moment is when you're representing your country, it's not just you. It's not just, a team or a city. It is the entire thing. And it really hit me in that moment. And I was, very fortunate enough to be in 5 World Cups, to also have that feeling with USA on my chest, a bunch of different qualifiers in the in-between, and then, of course, 5 Olympics. So it's really special. Never took that moment for granted. And again, now in this seat, I get to have impact in a different way.
Thank you for sharing that story with us. Where is the medal now?
Oh, they're all my medals. World Cup, Olympics, they're all at home.
Oh, you didn't give it to the pilot?
No.
No.
I was like, it's pretty safe. I knew it wasn't going anywhere. We're on a plane, so.
How it was wonderful having you in Sydney as the global ambassador as well, and such a champion of women and women in sport. Why is that role so important to you?
For different reasons. I've always enjoyed watching the women's game. Sue and her teams were unbelievable. Her commitment to her country, to her national team, to the game. It's just something that I feel very, strongly about, and I felt pretty much the same, right? So to me, just seeing how the growth of the game, seeing the differences over the years when I played, and understanding why and how that happens, and how can we make that shorten, and the progress that has been made. Obviously, Kobe was an inspiration there too, and his impact and his involvement with Gigi. So that was something that was very close to my heart, and by him and her passing, I felt like I wanted to kind of try to follow that path and get more involved in having my own daughter as well. I wanted to have any and every opportunity as my son will have. So for those things, for the love of the game, I'm just, as Sue was saying, it's a very exciting time for women's basketball, for women in sports, for women's in our world. So it's, I'm just happy to be a part of that process and contribute in any way I can. Sydney was very special. It was super fun. It was super exciting. I feel, privileged to be there, to be able to support, to be able to contribute, to be able to enjoy, really, because it was so much fun. Sydney responded really well. It was kind of everything played out perfectly. The fans, it was sold out. It was fantastic. China obviously had a huge fan base and community there. Lauren Jackson, her story, what an amazing, inspiring story. So there's so many great things. That's what sport provides to us in our world, and you just got to continue to support and get involved.
It really was so special in Sydney. Thank you, Pau. We can't wait to hear more of your reflections of your time as our global ambassador. I'd love to open up the floor for any questions. I'd like to remind everyone today that we are keeping all our questions about the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup 2026. If anyone has any questions for Pau, potentially about this wonderful World Cup that we're here for, we look forward to you asking those questions at our press conference tomorrow. When I do select you, please say your name and where you're from. Yes.
Tim Reynolds of the Associated Press. Sue, it's very weird to hear you say former player
I
still,
know.
by the way.
Tell me about it.
It's very strange. Congratulations on this.
Thank you.
Have you given any thought to how unusual or challenging it might be to see someone else wear number 6 in 24 and 26?
No, I haven't. I think the beauty of playing a 20-year career, a 20-year professional career, is you know you did as much as you could. You left it all. There's nothing left. And I feel really passionate about, or I felt really passionate as a player trying to leave my mark, right? Whether it was with wins, impacting a team, you know, hopefully a country. And now as a former player, I feel just as passionate about continuing that. And that means there's going to be another number 6. That means somebody's probably going to play in more World Cups than me. But that's the point, right? That's the point. It's to continue to promote, to grow, to elevate the game. So there's some little girl out there right now who maybe, you know, sees, you know, any of the teams really, but obviously for me, the U.S. team, and can dream and can have that dream. And then again, try to exceed it.
And one quick follow. You mentioned this is a very exciting time for women's basketball,
Yep.
and it is, especially at home. Would you mind handicapping the MVP race, the 3 people that are head and shoulders above everybody else right now? If you had to pick, who would it be?
In the WNBA?
Yes. Thank you.
Well, I always start by saying I have major bias, so my answer will probably forever be Brianna Stewart.
Next question. Yep.
Hi, Sue. Emmett Ryan from Ball in Europe here. Obviously, like the last couple of years, we've seen extraordinary growth in the WNBA and NCAA women's basketball. So the American growth is looking great. What can we do to sort of replicate that across the world in places like Europe so that like this World Cup can really resonate with more young people around the world?
There's a lot of directions to go with that question. I think the way I try to view it is it's not WNBA and then FIBA and Europe's over here and Australia's. It's not. It's one. It's a global game. And I think when one grows, it's only going to help the other and vice versa. Something that I just thought about, you know, listening to Paul talk about Lauren Jackson is women's sports, women's basketball, we have stories. There's so many incredible stories. And a lot of times those just haven't had the chance to be told. And I think a big part of what made that Sydney World Cup so special was Lauren's story, amongst others for sure. But for her in that moment, I mean, how special, and for everyone to hear that, I think that's how, you know, that's how you build a fan base, that's how you build viewership. It's so people can feel directly connected. So I think one part, there's many parts, but one part can be telling more of the players' stories. I think there's been a lack of that in women's sports in general, to be honest. No problem.
Next question. Yes.
Hello, Christos Salas, Portal Greece. Question for both of you, actually. How a potential succeed in a World Cup can change the career of a player? And I mention especially about Spanish national team that after the Saitama success in 2006, you became a dynasty, not only in Europe, but also in the world.
I think that one's for you first.
Okay. I mean, obviously, becoming world champion, it's something that I guess stays with you forever in a way, right? I don't think it defines you, you know, defines your life, but it's definitely a moment that you can be extremely proud of. As Sue was saying, representing your country is something unique and special that we have been very lucky to do in many occasions. You know, inspiring a country, making a country, you know, cry, jump, scream, excited, right? So it's the beauty of it too. And obviously, you know, sometimes you fall short, and in the country or the fans suffer with you. You know, it's part of it. But so it definitely for us, it was a huge moment, as you mentioned, in 2006. becoming world champions for the first time. Then our country was able to do it again in 2019, and we've kind of built an identity and a culture that now has continuity despite the generational change, which has been great. Great to watch. I'm very proud of that. One of the, probably the things that I'm most proud of, to see those young guys kind of following up those values, those roots, those concepts, that identity that we built over the years. So yeah, it is special. And so you see here the list of all the countries. Sue's country here is well represented in the women's side, and obviously also in the men's. But it's something to be proud of. I think we put a lot of effort into our careers. We put a lot of work, and it's definitely a reward that you feel proud of.
The only thing I would add is the World Cup, just the way the competition system is, arguably one of the harder tournaments, right? The way the qualification works out. And I remember when I first, way back in 2002, my first couple of World Cups, we played 9 games, I believe. So as time has gone, winning those tournaments, I mean, that is no, even though they don't play 9 now, it's still no easy task. But that was no easy task. And I think for me personally, that was my first taste, not the Olympics. My first taste was in China in the 2002 World Cup of what international basketball was, what it meant to wear the USA jersey, what it meant to have every team wanting to beat you and kind of living up to that standard. So that was just the one thing I wanted to add. I think you kind of hit it on the head.
Thank you. Next question.
Hello, Konstantinos Melagis from Athens, Greece, representing Gazeta.gr and Gazeta Women. One question for Ms. Bird. How difficult do you think it's to convince the fans that basketball is the same game? No women's basketball, no men's basketball, the excitement is the same, everything is the same. How difficult is that?
I don't think it's difficult. I think women's basketball fans are there. They're out there. They're out there. They just haven't been able to have access to it. And I think, obviously as an American, seeing what I've seen, on our home soil, that's the case. People try to tell you that there aren't fans out there. They try to tell you that nobody goes to games. I mean, in Sydney, looked like they were there, right? I think it's just a matter of access. It's a matter of what I mentioned earlier about telling stories, the content, building campaigns, whether it's marketing, promotional, putting that type of investment into the women's game. Because the fan already exists. You don't have to convince them.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, hi, Andrew McCurdy from AFP. There's a question for both of you. Last month, Spain won the Women's Football World Cup, and what should have been a big moment for the country has been overshadowed by what happened with the country's president. How can we stop things like this happening in women's sport in the future?
Well, I think we're already trying to do that, starting to do that. It starts with people being able to tell their truth. It starts with holding the powers that be, for lack of a better, accountable. I think it's a very sad situation what happened to Jenny. I fully support her. I think we all saw it with our own eyes. And, the sad part is that even when you see it, people aren't necessarily held accountable. Hopefully we see more of that accountability. But I think that's where it starts, being able to, as a woman in this case, for Jenny, be able to tell her truth, people believe her, and then the powers that be get held accountable.
Okay, next question.
It was for you want me to answer too, right? It was for both of us, right? Yeah, no, I completely agree with Sue. I think at the end of the day, we, obviously for us, me being a Spanish citizen and seeing my country win for the first time ever the World Cup in women's soccer, it was a little bit disappointing, or very disappointing, actually, to see that happen, see that moment happen, and that type of behavior, even to take away from a moment of joy and happiness, and those amazing women did an amazing job winning the World Cup. It was difficult, it was very challenging for me, and I think for our country in a way to experience that, and now we're still dealing with it. So yes, as Sue was saying, you gotta that type of behavior cannot be tolerated or accepted, and that's why you gotta be able to protect and stand out, and be able to call it out, and also because as a president of a federation, you should know better, but it happened. So now you got to deal with it and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Thank you. Next question.
Yeah, hi, Beatrice Goff from Al Jazeera. And so they would say that the women's game, there's a lot of things that are unique about it compared to the men's game. So the question for both of you is that from the competition format to the hosting of the World Cup, what are these unique differences between the men's and women's game?
You mean the actual?
How can we support the uniqueness of women's basketball through like the hosting, the competitions, and
I think I'm not sure which direction to go on that, but we'll pick one. I just think, like I said, I think women's basketball right now, what I'm seeing in terms of the product is just it continues to get better year after year. And what's really special about wanting to be a fan of the World Cup is that, like was said earlier, we have a two-year time frame to become fans of a player, of a team, to follow that player or that team and watch the growth. Because what's really special about women's basketball is that growth part. Whether you think of investment as a whole, we're starting to get more. So of course, you're starting to see more growth across the board. And I think for players, what's interesting for me as somebody who never thought about the game of basketball or never thought about how to better myself as a player when I was 22, probably to 32, what you're seeing now in terms of working on your individual game, even things like working on your nutrition, taking care of yourself, you're just seeing better play. It's just what it is. And so the growth you've seen, to compare it, the growth you've seen in the men's game, like individually, when you look at players from 20 years ago to now, you're starting to see that in the women's game. So it's really exciting, I think, to tap into the qualifications, to follow a player, follow a team, because you're going to be able to watch an evolution of both.
I think when you're trying to, thinking about the differences, and one of the things that we touched on was, the visibility was one of them, and then the resources, the structure that the men's have had for so long. It's very different than the structure and the support and the staff that the women's have had, for a long time, or haven't had for a long time. So now to be able to have the staff, the support, to enhance their performance, to enhance the product. I think that's something that we're starting to see more and more, and hopefully we'll continue to do that. And we've seen the results, the excitement that produces. So it's not so much the difference on the game or picking what is the male or female game different. It's just really enhancing both in a similar or same way, really. So that's what we're seeing at the end of the day, and the importance and the relevance of it.
Great, thank you. Next question.
Sue, hi, David Hine with FIBA. You mentioned growth. You've been to obviously a lot of World Cups, and we're here to talk about 2026. 2022 broke a lot of records. We're also going to have a larger field in 2026. Maybe your thoughts, expectations about the continued growth, and then also about the expanded field and how excited you are, and maybe a little bit of expectation.
Yeah, what I love about the expanded field is the ambition of it all, right? If you're a team that's vying for a spot to compete in the World Cup and there's limited spots, it might take away your motivation. It might make you feel, especially if you're a team that's maybe never been, a country that's never been, it might take away your motivation. So the expanded field, it gives more opportunity. And that's really what it's all about. It's about being able to provide opportunity to players, to clubs, to countries, so they can have that dream, that ambition. So that's what I really enjoy, I think, or like about the extended field. And my expectation is hopefully just to build on Sydney. That's really all you can do. It's any time you have a breakthrough, the way that the Sydney World Cup was, you just want to learn from it, right? And kind of, see maybe where there were some mistakes. I don't know if there were, but I'm just saying, you learn from your mistakes, but you also learn from the things that worked. And you try to take that with you. Berlin will be its own World Cup, and I think, again, with the expanded field, it's going to bring a different type of excitement, and I'm looking forward to building on Sydney and letting Berlin kind of be its own star.
Next question.
Hello, Sue, Pau. Here, Kevin Chareon for UQ Web from Argentina. From the influence of players like you, Sue, like Diana Taurasi, like UNESCO now, or also FIBA players like Jackson in Australia, Torrens in Spain, Greter in my country, the knowledge and the popularity of women's basketball has been really growing up in the last years. I would like to ask you, what are your dreams and also your perspective about the future of women's basketball over the world?
Yeah, I think I touched on a little bit earlier. I think what we're learning in the world of women's basketball is working together can always get you a little further. Being collaborative is always going to get you a little further. I'm sure you guys experience that in your own workplaces, and that's where I really mean that. It's not the WNBA over here and FIBA over there. It's not. It needs to be one team, for lack of a better. And I think when those things, and hopefully I can help be somebody that can bridge those gaps. And when that's happening, it touches back on what I said before about opportunity. I think, you mentioned some great players. And the beauty of what's happening now with social media is those types of players you're able to see them. Other countries that don't necessarily have whatever TV station a game is on, they can't see that in their country. They get to tap into social media and follow those players and become fans. And that's where fan bases start. For me, in my retirement season, God, the amount of international fans that came over to Seattle blew me away. Like people, and I was like, how'd you even see me play ever? But they were able to find ways to do that. And I think that really spoke volumes in a lot of ways, because for men's basketball, they've been doing that. They've had those opportunities in other ways. And for women, we're just starting to figure that out, and it's exciting.
From my perspective, what I would like to see is really more girls playing basketball when they're young. I see we run a foundation and we look at physical activity, we look at girls playing sports, and we look at the number of girls that stop playing sports after 12, 13 in their start of their teenage years. So I like to see those numbers be sustained or grown. And now I like, for girls to see a path forward. That if they want to become a basketball player, that they can, and they can have a fantastic living. That's what I would like to see in the near future. More girls getting excited about playing basketball, playing sports, being active, being healthy, fulfilling their dreams.
Thank you so much. Next question.
Hi, everyone. Pilar Casado from Cadena Cope. Which message is for both? What message you can give to all these young girls that love basketball, that are beginning to play, but sometimes they have to leave it because they have to decide, okay, I have to study and I can do not both at the same time. What is your message for them? Thank you.
Oh, that's an easy one. Everything I have learned in sport, and by the way, this doesn't have to do with elite sport. This isn't because I'm sitting here as a former professional athlete. Everything I've learned from sport has segued into life. Everything. How to get along with people, how to set goals and achieve them. And I think the message for little girls, little boys, it doesn't matter, is while I do want to acknowledge that time management becomes a thing as you get older, especially when you go into higher education or maybe you get your first job, I totally appreciate that. But staying in sport is going to give you the life lessons you need. School, of course, you're going to learn. You're going to get a lot of knowledge. But sports gives you the really important life lessons that you're going to carry with you and you'll never forget for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think sport is such an incredible educator. And I think it gives you so many skill sets that you'll be able to apply later on in life at any point, and it's extremely valuable. So, I would encourage any young person, like as Sue said, girl and boy, to understand how powerful that is, and also for parents, obviously, to not to push it, but to support it, right, in a way that that they understand the importance of it, the relevance of it. And again, as Sue was saying, school is important, and it gives you the academics are important. We question to what extent and how much that would be productive later on. But the values that you learn through sport, through the practice of sport, are something that is invaluable, really, and it will carry on for the rest of your life.
Thank you. Next question.
Hello. Hi, Sue. Hi, Pau.
Hi.
Nicole Ganglani from SB Nation. Pau, you had mentioned a while ago that Kobe played a huge role in helping you take this role as a global ambassador for women's basketball. I'm wondering, did he ever tell you about his plans on how he wanted to forward women's basketball? And if so, what were they? And do you plan to continue those plans for him right now?
Well, it's not that while ago. I said it at the start of the press conference. How it will, his impact, really influenced and affected and inspired me to get involved and to be proactive in my role of support of women in sports and women in the world, basically. So. It's not that he told me specifically his plans. I know that he had plans. I know we could see it. Talking to Andreas, I know that we had it in the World Cup of Beijing. When he was there as an ambassador, he had conversations with Andreas and Patrick Baumann as far as taking a bigger role, becoming an ambassador for the Women's World Cup, because he wanted Gigi to have the same opportunities as he had. And when we say Gigi, we say every girl, any girl in the world. So he was part of that change, and I think, so it just inspired me and touched me, it opened my eyes, and it helped me also get more involved and be more proactive, like I said, and be a part of the change and the growth.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Louis Morales from Philstar. A question for Sue. You talk about the game being a global one, but of course, not all nations, I guess, have the same access to the resources. So for developing countries, maybe here, like in the Philippines, what would be your advice to further develop women's basketball?
Oh, man. This might be above my pay grade. No, I mean, I think what we were talking about for young people, in terms of what sports can give young people, if more of those that are in charge viewed it that way, I think it would change where they put their resources, where they're able to maybe build a budget to put the importance on sports, especially for little girls, because they're probably the ones that are going to receive even less of the opportunity compared to little boys. So I wish people would view it more as a tool for education, a tool to better yourself, to become a more well-rounded person overall. And then through that, hopefully you can bring in people from other countries that have already, developed things for knowledge, because that's what it is. You have to be able to understand, to gain knowledge. I feel like in women's sports, a lot of times there is just that gap that exists, because things around women's sports are different from men's. Not worse, not better, just different. And you have to have knowledge around the game itself. And that's more specific to if a country was building something in terms of like a national team. But I think the best way to start it is to put the emphasis on why this is good for younger people.
One last question.
Two here, José Ramón Alba, de Baser TV from Spain. In terms of sportive adaptation, we saw how maybe Brandon Ingram is not adapting well to the FIBA basketball. As long as some players like AJ Wilson or Sabrina Ionescu are not going to play under FIBA rules, unless in national competitions, Brianna Stewart maybe it's not playing anymore in FIBA competitions. Do you think it would happen like to Brandon Ingram for the players that represent the USA in the future having problems to adapt to the rules?
I don't think that I think that's specific to individual players. The FIBA game is different. When you play internationally, it is different. I can sit here and speak about my experience, which was I played in the 2002 World Cup, I played in the 2004 Olympics, and because of injury and other things, I didn't go overseas. Or I didn't play in FIBA in Europe, right? And then after those two experiences, I was like, well, I need to go learn this, because it was totally different. I was not ready, I was not prepared. And so that was the decision for me. But that's not to say there aren't multiple ways to go about this. There's been a lot of players who haven't played in FIBA from the US who have had successful times in World Cups and Olympics. So I think there are multiple ways that you can do that. It's up to each individual, to be honest. With that, one thing I know for sure, again, I can only speak from my experience, every time our national team met, the first thing we talked about was the rule changes, the differences, the ways in which referees call the game is a little different. And we emphasize having an open mind to that. We emphasize being adaptable to that, to not try to make it, like a WNBA game, because it's not. And I think it's really important as a player to take that onto yourself, to understand that going into any competition, because it is different.
Thank you so much for all your questions. Pau, have you got any final little tips that you'd like to pass on to Sue as a global ambassador?
Is it heavy? What's going on here?
No, I don't think it's that heavy. No, I mean, Sue, she's amazing. I couldn't think of, and I truly mean this, couldn't think of anyone better to be an ambassador for the game. Even though I'm passing the baton and the torch, and I hope I can be there as well, supporting Sue and FIBA in the tournament in 2026 in Berlin. And I'm just excited. I'm excited that Sue cares and gets involved, and she's going to make a big difference. And I'm sure she'll get others also to to join her and to continue to team up. As you said, this is a team effort. This is a global game. This is us caring. This is bigger picture, right? So I'm just very excited, and I'm very happy to have Sue here. And like I said, I couldn't think of anyone better.
Pau, thank you so much for everything that you did as the Global Ambassador for Sydney. It was such a wonderful success. And Sue, we're so excited for you to be taking this baton now officially and gearing up and getting ready for 2026. Do you have any final thoughts before we get excited to get started?
Well, thank you for your words. It's been amazing to learn from you, to sit up here with you, listen to your thoughts. Thank you for everybody for attending, and let's get excited for Germany.
There you go.
Thank you so much once again to Pau Gasol and Sue Bird. We do have a presentation that will be happening for Sue during one of the games today, so it's another opportunity for us to celebrate this exciting moment. Otherwise, we are looking forward to 2026. Thank you so much.